Next, we have Anja Lyngbaek. I hope I pronounced your name sort of correctly, to speak about big picture activism.
That's correct.
Okay,
well
great.
Done, Alex.
Anja Lyngbaek is the Associate Programs Director at Local Futures. She has worked with Local Futures for many years in different capacities, as coordinator of the UK Local Food Program and the International Economics of Happiness Conference Series, and as coordinator of the International Alliance for Localization and World Localization Day. Fluent in Spanish, English, and Danish, Anja is an articulate spokesperson for localization on several continents. She divides her time between a Mexican ecovillage and a small island in the Danish Archipelago. Anja has a background in rural resource management and agroforestry, is a passionate food grower, and is happiest with her hands in the soil. Anja, welcome to our conference. We're delighted you can speak. Have at it.
Thank you, Alex. I'm sorry I arrived late, but I signed up for another local face-to-face event that was being planned a long time ago. I'm calling in from Denmark, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I will unfortunately share a PowerPoint with you for a time. I hope it won't be too boring. And then my hope was that we could have a bit of an open conversation and maybe break into some smaller groups to have more of a chance to everybody get a chance to speak, and then come back maybe and share a bit of our thoughts afterwards. So that's what I had envisioned for the coming hour, and I hope you take the time to participate. So big picture activism is kind of a term we've coined at Local Futures, but it's sort of pretty self-explanatory. We are talking about approaching things from a bird's eye view and a big picture perspective, basically to identify and address the root causes of the multiple crises that we now face. And sorry, I'm having trouble here. And the reason why we've felt the need to talk about it from this perspective is that, looking back at all the good efforts that many of us have been involved with, for some of us for decades, some of us that are a bit older, when we look back now, it doesn't look like we spent many years firefighting rather than addressing the root causes, because to a great extent we've been focusing on single issues, both campaign and in the way we've analyzed problems. So we've got the sector looking at the environment, the climate, others approaching concerns about social justice, about jobs, and so forth. And we haven't really been sufficiently good at working together or addressing the root causes. And that has, in essence, meant that we have wasted a lot of time. So part of this problem, a huge part, as we see it, is that we kind of suffer from a collective economic illiteracy. And it's great, specifically this conference, that we are addressing that. Because despite years of math in most of our lives, many of us have gone to school 10, 15 years, had hundreds of lessons of math, but how many of us have actually grown up with an understanding of how the economic system works? The very economic system that really are dictating our lives, our societies, and fueling the majority of the crises that we are facing. I would say very few of us probably, and not just us here or the general population, but the same thing goes for most of the politicians in power. Here's a little infograph from the UK. It's from 2014, but I fear it hasn't changed much. Here in this survey, 7 out of 10 MPs in the UK had no clue about how our monies are made. They basically, 7 out of 10 think that only the government is making the money, whereas only 1 in 10 was aware that new money is made by private banks when someone takes out a loan. Basically, 97% of our money is created by private banks and financial institutions, and it's a debt-based economy. And this is not exclusive to the UK. The same thing is true in my native Denmark and in many other places. So both us, the general population, and politicians have been relying on a very small group of so-called experts, economists, that sadly have studied outdated economic theories based on false assumptions, which I'm sure many of us have been challenging during the last few years, the theories of free trade and comparative advantage, and the theory of growth and the trickle-down effect that says that eventually everybody will be better off if we grow the economy a bit more. And some of the things that we have identified as the differences between a big picture perspective and a kind of single issue perspective is that if we don't adopt a big picture, we often think that the problems we are facing are a result of local conditions, say a political party or cultural or traditions, or maybe something to do with uneducated, irresponsible consumers. Now, we often tend to then also identify the symptoms as the actual problem, say, mental health. We see that as a personal thing rather than something that comes out of an unhealthy system. No? We also often end up treating the symptoms with kind of downstream or pseudo solutions that I'll talk a bit more about. And then we applaud ourselves for taking action that, in effect, is ineffective. On the other hand, if we adopt a big picture perspective, we look for patterns in the problems from an international perspective, then we suddenly are able to see that many of the problems we have in one country will also have another problem in other countries as a result of the economic model that is dominating worldwide. We also can identify the root causes, pinpoint structural mechanisms that are involved, and we have a chance of identifying key policy changes that are needed for systemic change. Sorry. Yeah. So I just wanted to just mention one pseudo solution that has stuck in my mind for a long time is, the problem of plastic waste, which when I look back at my sort of adult life has been approached in this way. When I was younger, it was all about, binning the waste, being responsible and not throwing your waste around. Then it shifted into let's recycle the waste, and then it was upcycling the waste. But essentially, we're not treating the real problem here. And, for decades, we have been exporting plastic waste to China until 2019, when they were saying no more. And most of this waste, half of it rather, is from packaging. So if we had taken a step back and adopted a big picture perspective, we would have thought that by stopping the subsidies to fossil fuels, we wouldn't have had all these problems of plastic that we are facing all over the world. With $5 trillion per year given in fossil fuel subsidies, it has gone down, but is still very high.